Then it answered as before. Queen, you're the fairest where you are, but Snow White, who the hills did roam, and now lives in the seven dwarfs' home, is more beautiful than you by far. When she heard that, all her blood flowed to her heart. She was so alarmed because she realized that Snow White had come to life again. But now, she said, I'll devise something that will totally destroy you, Snow White. And with the dark arts of magic that she understood, she made a poisoned comb. Next, she disguised herself, taking the form of a different old woman. She then crossed the seven mountains and arrived at the home of the seven dwarfs, knocking at the door. Beautiful things for sale! For sale! Snow White looked out and said, Go your way, I'm not allowed to let anyone in. You're surely permitted to look at things, the old woman said as she pulled out the poisoned comb and held it up. The child liked it so much that she let herself be fooled and she opened the door. When they had come to terms over the sale, the old woman said, Now I'll give you a proper combing. Poor Snow White didn't imagine anything was wrong and let the woman have her way. But scarcely had she thrust the comb into Snow White's hair when the poison in it took effect, and the girl fell down unconscious. You paragon of beauty, said the malicious woman, it's all up with you now. And she left. But fortunately, it wasn't long until evening when the seven dwarfs came home again. When they saw Snow White lying on the floor dead, they immediately suspected her stepmother. They made a search and discovered the poisoned comb, and scarcely had they drawn it out of Snow White's hair than she came back to life again and told them what had occurred. When they warned her again to be on her guard and not to open the door for anybody, she said she would listen to them this time. Back home, the queen stood before her mirror and said, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror replied again, Queen, you're the fairest where you are, but Snow White, who the hills did roam, and now lives in the seven dwarfs' home, is more beautiful than you by far. When the queen heard the mirror say that, she shivered and shook with anger. Snow White shall die, she said, even if it costs my own life. Then she went to a totally secluded, solitary chamber that no one ever visited. There she made a poisonous, poisonous apple. It looked beautiful on the outside, white with red cheeks, so that everyone who caught sight of it got an appetite for it. But whoever ate even a little piece of it was doomed to die. When the apple was ready, she dyed her face and disguised herself as a farmer's wife. Then she crossed the seven mountains and arrived at the home of the seven dwarfs. She knocked. Snow White put her head out the window and said, I'm not allowed to let anyone in. The seven dwarfs have forbidden me to do it. That's all the same to me, the farmer's wife said. I'll get my apples off my hands anyway. Here, let me make you a present of one. No, said Snow White, I'm not allowed to accept anything. Are you afraid of a little poison? The old woman said. Watch, I'm cutting the apple in two. You eat the red cheek and I'll eat the white one. But the apple was so craftily made that only the red cheek was poisoned. Snow White had a craving for the pretty apple, and when she saw the farmer's wife eating some of it, she was no longer able to resist. She stretched out her hand and took the poisoned half, but scarcely did she have a morsel in her mouth when she fell to the floor dead. The queen studied her with a fearful gaze, laughed very loud, and said, White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony. This time the dwarfs can't wake you up again. And back home, when she asked the mirror, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? It finally answered, Queen, you're the fairest in the country. Then her envious heart was at peace, to the extent that an envious heart can be at peace. When the dwarfs came home in the evening, they found Snow White lying on the floor again. No breath was issuing from her lips anymore, and she was dead. They lifted her up, searched for any poisoned object, undid her laces, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine, but nothing did any good. The beloved child was finally, definitely dead. They placed her on a bier, and all 7 of them sat down beside it and wept for her. They wept 3 days long. Then they wanted to bury her, but she still looked as healthy as a living person and still had lovely red cheeks. They said, "We can't lower someone like this into the black earth." And they had a coffin of transparent glass made, in which she could be seen from all sides, and they placed her in it and wrote her name on it in gold letters, stating that she was a princess. Then they placed the coffin outside on the mountain, and one of them was always with it, guarding it. And the wild creatures came too, and wept for Snow White. First an owl, then a raven, and finally a dove. Now Snow White lay in the coffin for a long, long time. She didn't decompose, but looked as if she were asleep, for she was still as white as snow and as red as blood, with hair as black as ebony. But it came to pass that a prince entered the forest and arrived at the dwarf's house, hoping to spend the night there. On the mountain he saw the coffin with lovely Snow White in it, and read what was written in gold letters. Then he said to the dwarfs, "Let me have the coffin. I'll give you whatever you want for it." But the dwarfs replied, "We won't give it up for all the gold in the world." Then he said, "In that case, make me a present of it, because I can't live without looking at Snow White. I will honor and revere her like my dearest, dearest treasure." When he said that, the kind dwarfs felt compassion for him and gave him the coffin. Now the prince had his servants bear it away on their shoulders. Then they happened to trip over a bush, and that jolt made a piece of the poisonous apple that Snow White had bitten off fly out of her throat. Before long she opened her eyes, lifted up the lid of the coffin, and sat up, and she was alive again. "Oh Lord, where am I?" she cried. Overjoyed, the prince said, "You're with me." And he told her what had happened, saying, "I love you more than anything else in the world. Come with me to my father's palace. You shall be my wife." Then Snow White felt affection for him, and she went with him, and their wedding was arranged with great splendor and pomp. And even Snow White's wicked stepmother was invited to the feast. After putting on beautiful clothes, she stepped in front of the mirror and checked herself out. And she said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror replied, "Queen, you're the fairest where you are, but the young queen is more beautiful by far." Then the evil woman uttered a curse and became so ill at ease, that she was beside herself. At first she had no desire to attend the wedding, but she had no peace. She had to go and take a look at the young queen. And as she entered, she recognized Snow White, and out of fear and fright she stood there, unable to move. But iron slippers had already been placed over the coal flames. Now they were carried with tongs and set down in front of her. The queen was forced to put her feet into the red-hot shoes and keep on dancing until she fell to the floor dead. The end.